All right, so the Battle of LA is over. At least the first preseason game between the two. I just want to remind everybody. I was planning on saying this because I was actually expecting the Rams to win like 27-21 or something like that, but they actually lost, so it doesn't really matter. Maybe for some of you out there that are upset, especially those of you that went to the game, you would have been upset with me if we won, but you'll probably be happy now that we lost because I was planning on saying the same thing. After this concluding game against the San Diego Chargers, our record against the Chargers is still 0-0 in the battle for LA. So I don't want anyone to really worry about the outcome of this game. There's a few things that I'm going to take away. A couple things that we're going to look forward to now with the 53-man roster, some options. I'm going to talk about three things today. I'm going to talk about obviously the quarterback play because I'm sure everyone right now is probably losing their mind. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the 53-man roster and what we can probably expect the Rams to do going into Thursday against Green Bay, and then obviously finally just basically what has transpired this preseason. So we'll cover those things coming up next. All right, so at any rate, getting back to this whole situation, the quarterback play is going to be what we talk about here first. A lot of you are probably pissed off, upset, whatever, at Goff's play, and you have every right to be upset with Goff's play. Jared Goff did not play well in this game. He did not play well at all. At times he looked lost. That was the ugliest throw I think I've ever seen. And well, not the ugliest throw I've ever seen, but certainly top 10 of the ugliest throws I think I've ever seen in any professional football game. I don't know if it slipped out of his hand or what, but it was a dying duck before it ever got anywhere near the area where somebody could make a play on it, and the only people that could make a play on it was the Chargers. I'm more upset with the fumble. No pocket presence on that play at all. Like, you need to understand, at least have a feeling of somebody coming at you. I also credit Bosa for making a great play on the ball and not going for the kill shot. We could have lost Jared Goff right there. This goes back to, for me, the blame does go on Goff for having no pocket presence, but it also goes on Havenstein. And this is exactly why I said last year our line was a problem. If we don't address it, it's going to continue to be an issue. I don't know how you get beat that badly in a goal-to-go situation. You can't do it. But Havenstein's not the one that didn't feel the rush coming. Havenstein's not the one that fumbled the ball. And Havenstein's not the one that threw the interception later on the next possession. I understand all of that. The line needs to understand they have a very raw quarterback. Pocket presence is something that takes time for some people, and for other people, it's something they're born with. When you spend 3 years at Cal, where it's drop back and throw, you'd like to think that he would have gotten that presence developed. He may never have it. Jim Everett was a guy that never had pocket presence. He just never did. So Joe Montana had pocket presence. I'll give you a quarterback that won Super Bowls that had absolutely no pocket presence. And that would be, God, now I'm totally forgetting the guy's name. Phil Simms of the Giants. Some guys have it, some guys don't. So it's not that you can't win a Super Bowl without it, but man, it's good when you have it. And he doesn't appear to have that. And that is a big omission in his game that I'm hoping McVay can teach and develop, because I do know people have learned it. If you look at Brett Favre, he always had it. But if you look at someone like Tom Brady, early in his career, he didn't have pocket presence. He does now. So it is a skill that can be learned. So you have that option. But he looked bad, but I want people to keep three things in mind. One, not that it's preseason, because preseason matters for these types of things, but I told you, I'm not going to get too excited this year, and I'm not going to get too down this year. It's going to be an up and down year. You're going to have a game like Oakland followed by a game like San Diego. But, we don't really know how good Goff is going to be because this wasn't a true dress rehearsal. Obviously, Sean McVay felt the dress rehearsal was last week. We had our starting front seven on defense didn't play in this game. Todd Gurley didn't even suit up. There was no Cooper Kupp, and I understand that he was injured. It's a little concerning. Hopefully he's okay. But, and I think we lost Tamrick Hemingway, at least for a short period of time, if not for the season. I haven't gotten an injury report yet, so I don't know what the status is on that. But, we went in handcuffing ourselves for this battle of LA, which is why I put it in quotes. Is it really a battle when you're not starting your defense? When you're not playing your best players? I mean, obviously the Rams went in thinking if we can beat them with mediocre players, not mediocre players, if we could beat them with our backups, what are we going to do against this team with our starters? Meanwhile, the Chargers took this battle seriously. They went out there and I'm convinced they were going to leave the starters out there for the whole first half. And their offensive line proved that, but there was no reason to keep Phillip Rivers out there when you have a 21-0 lead or a 14-0 lead. And Jared Goff is turning the ball over left and right. And Mannion's coming in to back him up. So, yeah, I would have sat him too. I'd have been like, you're done. There's no reason to push this. But needless to say, for the game that's supposed to be the dress rehearsal for the season, obviously I think that's week 2 now, guys. I'm looking forward to this in the future of preseason games. I think week 2 of the preseason is the dress rehearsal week because that's when the starters went the whole half. These guys didn't even go a quarter, and most of the guys didn't even play. Now, next week or this week coming up against Green Bay, they're not going to play any of their starters. I would be shocked if they played any of their starters beyond a series, if they played them at all, because you've got to figure out what you've got on that 53-man roster. So overall, you should be concerned about the inconsistency, but you also need to be understanding that it's going to be inconsistent. Okay? He's in his second year. He's learning a new system. He's got new weapons. He's got a new line that he's got to develop trust with. And he's young. Brett Favre, look at Brett Favre. Known for making the dumb decision at the wrong time early in his career. And look at what he became. Terry Bradshaw, they benched him in year 4 of his career, year 3 of his career rather. So in 73. So you can't gauge how he's going to play through the whole preseason, but there are things that you can figure on. You can figure that he's going to be hot and cold. You can figure that there's going to be a learning curve. You can figure that he's going to have days like Oakland, and he's going to have days like San Diego. And then he's going to have days like Dallas. I thought the Dallas game, he played well. In 2 series, he made good throws. He threw the ball away when he had to. He was able to zip it in there. There wasn't a lot of film there to look at in the Dallas game, but, certainly played better than what the experts claimed. So, Jared Goff is a work in progress. I've been telling you guys that. We know that. I know this one hurts a little bit more because a lot of you out there really wanted the Rams to win this game against San Diego. I wanted the Rams to win this game against San Diego. But, and yes, I'm saying San Diego on purpose if you're wondering. I refuse to call them what they think they are because they're not. And then, and plus it's a Freudian slip. I'm going to try to remember to call them Oakland Raiders rather than San Diego, or Oakland Chargers rather than San Diego. But the Raiders are still in Oakland. I don't want to confuse people when I say Oakland and be like, dude, we play the Chargers. Yeah, I know. So I'll just keep it with San Diego till the Raiders move because that's when the Chargers are going to Oakland anyway. But, I want them to win this game too, but they didn't. And I'm also looking at it going, it's preseason, and we didn't play 3/4 of our roster while they used all of their starters on both sides of the ball. I'm not going to sweat it. I'm not going to worry about it. So, yes, Jared Goff looked bad. I fully admit it, and he needs to improve. I want to touch on one last thing here really quick, and that is the play of Sean Mannion. He got a lot of extended time in this game, and he looked really good at times, and he looked really bad at times. He looked like a backup, but he looked like a serviceable backup. Orlovsky didn't really look good at all. So I told you guys I want to see Orlovsky so I can determine who I think would be a better backup. Well, there's no question it's Mannion. I know Orlovsky hasn't gotten a lot of time in games, but they gave him plays that he should be able to execute in practice and in the game, and he didn't. So I did not like the way he looked. So Mannion's our backup. And I think if we were to get injured and he would have to start for a long period of time, I think you'd be looking at a 6-10, 7-9 record. With Goff, I think we're looking at 10-6, 11-5, despite today or yesterday. I do think that the growth and the progress is there. Mannion is just as inconsistent as Goff, but I think Goff has the better tool set, which is why he's the starter. Time will tell. Segment 2 coming right up. So I hope you guys understand, too, the reason I'm kind of taking a really level attitude towards this whole Goff situation is what I said to end the first segment. Time will tell. We're not going to get the answer that we want right now. And unfortunately, we live in a society where they want immediate results. They want immediate verification of what they think or thought was supposed to happen. And there are times in the business world you do need immediate results. But there are times even in the business world you know you're not going to get immediate results. It's a time-tested manner in which you're doing things. And that's never been more evident than in football and at quarterback. You can't expect these guys that are playing a sport that are transitioning from one to the other to be as dynamic as they were in college. There's a learning curve, especially at quarterback. I think back in the time when the wishbone was the big offensive thing, you never saw wishbone quarterbacks getting drafted because it doesn't transpire, it doesn't translate. I often wonder why in the spread option era we spent so much time drafting spread option quarterbacks. We did draft wishbone quarterbacks back in the 80s, but we understood either they were going to need to change a position or that there was something there that they saw. It's like today all they do is draft spread option quarterbacks and go, look at how well they throw. Well, it's a spread option. First of all, if you're running that offense, you're running it for 3 reasons. 1, you're running it because your skill positions are superior to anybody else on the field, or at least you feel that that is your strength. Number 2, you have a very weak offensive line that is not capable of blowing people off the ball and moving piles. You're looking for smoke and mirrors. Number 3, your quarterback isn't able to read a field. He's got to make quick, immediate decisions. In a spread option offense, you're told what to do. You read the defensive end, and then you pop it to a player, okay? Or you are faking the read with no intention to run, and you're basically looking at 1 or 2 players in what they're doing, and then you pull it out and you hit those quick hitters. That's all it is. Essentially, the routes are all planned out, just like they are regularly for a quarterback. But what ends up happening is the coach tells the quarterback who they're going to on a given play or what side of the field they're looking at on a given play. Watch this year. Watch college football this year. Watch these spread option quarterbacks. They may be reading left to right, but you'll notice they tend to throw to the same side of the field or the same guy, and that's because they're told who to throw to. Some spread option quarterbacks, and there are some, that are able to make those reads, and they're given that opportunity on their own, much like a triple option quarterback, right? They're allowed the opportunity not to pitch it. Sometimes they're told to pitch it. Sometimes they're told not to pitch it. Sometimes they're basically just given to their own devices and say, you're so good at this, do what you want. I can't remember the kid's name, but he played quarterback at Oklahoma in '88. That's one of the first ones that pops in my head. I'm sorry, '85. Number 4. I cannot remember his name, but he played for the Oklahoma Sooners. He was kind of given free reign to do what he wanted. It's an offense that doesn't translate to the NFL. It's a position that doesn't translate to the NFL more often than not. And unless you see something in the tool set, really trying to go get them doesn't work. And you could go through the list of spread option quarterbacks and see all the ones that failed. So Goff comes in running, what they call the bear raid, which was a version of the spread option, but it was basically all bear raid was 5 wide and throw it every play. It was basically a shotgun offense. So I'm a little more lenient to think Goff can pull it off because A, I've seen the tool set, and B, he didn't run a true spread when he was in college. So there is that. Mariota ran a true spread, we're still kind of waiting to see. Now, he had tools as well. So there was an example of someone that worked. But Tim Tebow, right, comes to mind as the spread option quarterback of all time that never translated. Any Ohio State quarterback that's ever played under Urban Meyer never translated. In fact, one had to completely change their position. So it's just not a position that translates, even though it's a position that exists. Spread option quarterback doesn't translate to NFL quarterback. It's just the way it is. And you can hate it, you can love it, but it's the way it works. Look at all the great quarterbacks. Tom Brady, Michigan, pro-style offense. Ben Roethlisberger, pro-style offense at Miami of Ohio. Phillip Rivers, pro-style offense at North Carolina State. The list goes on and on. Aaron Rodgers, California, they ran a pro-style offense. That's what translates. And more colleges need to do what they need to do to work. But if I'm a quarterback and I want to go pro, I'm avoiding spread option teams with like the bubonic plague. I don't want anything to do with them. Anyway, the 53-man roster. There's a few guys that I'm really excited to look at. I'm really starting to notice this guy Sales. He's really standing out. Not been real impressed with Smart. He had that good game against Dallas, and then he's kind of disappeared. He looked like crap against the starters in San Diego, and the Chargers have one of the worst offensive lines in football going into this year. And although Dan Feeney, hopefully you guys noticed him, pancaking Ram player after Ram player and helping that offensive line open up holes and moving the Chargers down the field, we decided on Gerald Everett. Just saying. Again, I don't hate Gerald Everett. I don't think Gerald Everett's going to be a bad player at all, but it wasn't a need. A need was offensive line. Now, obviously, it's a need in McVay's offense because he needs more than one tight end, but I digress. Another one that I'm really excited about is Davis. I really like Davis. He ever since that first game against Dallas when he popped all over the screen but fumbled all over the place, he hasn't fumbled once. And he's been very, very careful in not fumbling from here on out. And he's really still shown some explosiveness. So I'm definitely excited about that. We'll see what the rest of the situation unfolds. But I've been pleased. I've been very, very pleased with what I've seen so far from the back end of the roster. And I think Sean McVay has a very difficult choice because there's a lot of talent to choose from. So that being said, we'll talk about what we've seen so far in the preseason and what that tells us. Segment 3, the final segment, coming right up. All right, so segment 3 coming right up. So I'm not really going to put a lot of stock in the Green Bay game. The Green Bay game on Thursday is literally going to be just evaluating our talent, seeing who's going to make the team, who isn't going to make the team. And I'm not really going to waste time telling you guys, look for this or look for that. It's all irrelevant. This was it. I expect we won't see Jared Goff. We won't see any of the starters next week. Like I said, I wouldn't even have them travel to Green Bay. I would just go with the rest of the roster. I take the 22 starters. I would still take Zuerlein just because I want to see him kick in all situations. I would have liked to see him try to kick that one that would have given us the lead. A little bit of a pressure kick before the season starts would have been nice. But I would take Zuerlein. I wouldn't take Hekker. I would take Coons. And I'm taking Zuerlein because I want Zuerlein to continue his confidence. He seems to be gaining it as the weeks go by. And then with a kicker, you don't want to mess that rhythm up. So you keep him going. You bring Coons to punt, and you say if we lose 141-0 in the preseason, who gives a flying fart? It's a preseason game against a team that, is probably in the same position we're in. We need to see what we have, and that's the approach that I would take. Now, what have we seen in the 2017 preseason? We've seen a head coach execute end-of-half scenarios to perfection, from the field goal with Greg Zuerlein this week to the situation with the Raiders last week to the Cowboy game the week before. Every end-of-half scenario he has not only done correctly, he's nailed it. We've seen penalties decrease. you guys are aware we only had 5 penalties, I think, or 3 penalties in that game against San Diego. And I'm not sure. I think I went back and looked at it. My numbers may be off, but I think I think we only had like 12 to 13 penalties total in 3 games. That's a tremendous upgrade from where we were a year ago under Jeff Fisher. We're not committing penalties. We had that turnover-filled game against Dallas and won it. And then it got cleaned up, and you haven't seen a turnover-filled game since. I know we had 2 in this game, Goff's fumble and pick. I think were the only 2 turnovers we had. There might have been more. But yeah, I'm just looking at it from a starter standpoint, you're seeing it clean up. We need to get better in that department, and trust me, McVay and the team knows that, and they're going to work on that. What I'm excited about, however, is that you've seen improvement in the 2 areas that were the most costly to the Rams last year. From a moving the ball standpoint, from an offensive standpoint, we've learned that this team can convert 3rd downs, and they can convert them pretty consistently, which is really good to know because that's another area that killed us last year in 2016. So that's been improved. I think Jared Goff has improved. It's night and day. If you look at Jared Goff in this game, and Jared Goff in the game against New England, let's just say last year, tremendous improvement. He made an unbelievable play where he avoided the rush and dumped it off to Malcolm Brown on that opening drive. He showed fluidity in the pocket, and he definitely is able to – he's aware of where all of his checkdowns are, and he's aware of where he is on the field. He just doesn't have that awareness of the rush, which is something that, I mentioned in the first segment, concerns me and needs to be worked on. But this is a completely different Jared Goff. And with Todd Gurley in the backfield, we're going to be a pretty strong football team. Malcolm Brown looks pretty good. He looked really good. So we appear to have a little bit more depth than we've had in the past, but we're still weak in that department. And I think ultimately the last pull away that I have is, what are we doing? What are we doing with Aaron Donald? Like, how has this not been resolved yet? If he's asking for too much money, that's one thing. But for everything I'm hearing, he's not. Pay him like he's a top 5 defensive lineman because he is. It's not like D tackles make an exorbitant amount of money in the National Football League. Make him the highest paid D tackle. Lock him up for 7 years on top of these 2, right? You tell him you're going to fill out this 2-year contract. You're going to finish it out under the contract that we have. And then year 3, we're going to give you an extension, a 7-year extension. And on year 3 of the extension, you'll be the highest paid defensive tackle in all of professional football. And then you give him a big, fat, humongous signing bonus to compensate for the money that he's making this year. This isn't hard to do. Either you have the money or you don't. We have the cap room. From everything I'm hearing, we have the cap room. So we need to get this Aaron Donald thing done because he's going to be essentially playing a new position this year under Wade Phillips' defense, and we need that rapport to happen. We haven't had our starting front 7 play together yet in 2017, and none of it's due to injury. In preseason, these guys need to work together. I'm expecting the Colt game, the first half of the Colts game, to be a little rough. Like, I think Scott Tolzien and the Colts are going to move the ball a little bit because we haven't played together. You may see individual efforts at submarine drives. And don't get me wrong, the Rams are still going to beat the Indianapolis Colts. But I expect it to be a little hairy in that first game because these guys haven't played together. And really, the first 3 games are winnable games. We have 2 at home and 1 at San Fran. And if we lose any of those 3 games, I'm going to go back to this situation under Les Snead and go, why couldn't you get a deal done? What is the problem? Sign Aaron Donald. He's the number 1 tackle in all of professional football. Pay the man like he is it because he is it. And if it's a money issue, go to some guys that are making too much money and go, look, we want Aaron Donald. We think we have something special this year. Will you take a pay cut? We'll restructure your contract so you make more later, but you make less on the front end so we can afford this. Like, it's not hard to figure out. Get it done. So those are the things that I'm pulling away from this preseason. Ultimately, guys, again, I'm just going to wrap up with Goff. I was not impressed. I was not happy. I thought he played poorly. I'll be perfectly honest with you. But I also understand that it's going to be like this year especially. And it may be like this for a bit next year until he really figures it out. You need to give him time to put it together. I keep saying that. But for those of you that are going, man, Goff, as good as he looked last week, he looked just as bad this week. I don't agree with that. He had 2 bad plays. He had a bad pass, and it was a really bad pass, and he had the fumble. And you could probably throw about 4 or 5 bad plays in there because he had a couple incompletions that were really ugly and just completely missed the mark, like the one to Higbee. But he also made some really good plays, and we're seeing improvements. So calm down, relax. The Battle of LA is not a battle. It's a slaughter. You didn't hear a single Charger fan in that stadium on TV except on scoring plays. That was it. When they said whose house, you didn't hear anyone say Chargers house or anyone say, it was Rams house. You heard it loud and clear across the TV. Now, for those of you that were there, you might be able to say, there was a lot of Charger support there, and that's fine. That's where the battle is going to happen on the home front. But from the observer watching on TV, there was no contest. Tell me, guys, if that's the case. For those who went to the game, verify what the support was like in that game for the preseason game. Anyway, this is Anthony Manna for LA Rams Central. See you guys next week. I'll be doing the preview for week 1 probably on Friday or Saturday, and we're going to do our predictions for the season and our standings predictions, and we'll do a breakdown of week 1, and the season is officially started. See you guys next week.